So this is gonna be just a pretty uncut tutorial. So I'm gonna just try to cover all of it in one full lesson, and I'll try to keep the pacing a reasonable pace so you can kind of follow along. But you might be able to see the boards over here. If you can't, I'll tell you what's on it. First, we're gonna go over eagle spread transitions. All right, so the way that I like to teach eagle spread, and this is how to do an eagle spread, is already covered in our fundamentals course. All right, so this is your basic eagle spread right here when you have your feet like that in a line. All right, the easiest way to start working on that is to just walk your heels up from this position right here and see if you can hold it. Try to go a little bit further. Make sure you're practicing that tall, low, wide, narrow in your feet. All right, but once you have that, which is the fundamental skill of what we're about to build on top of, then you can use it as a transition to turn around backwards. So transition is anytime you're going from forward to backward or backward to forward. So I'm gonna scissor, swing my leg around, and then complete the transition. Okay, so here it is one more time. This is our scissor position. I'm gonna roll my front foot around and out, and then I'm gonna take my other foot, and now I'm going backwards. All right, so there's a little bit of, there's some nuances to how this is done. It's not necessarily as easy as it looks, especially if you're learning this for the first time. Let's talk about where my weight is and how I'm using my edges. All right, so I'm scissored right here. We're in the scissor position. My weight is distributed evenly right now. I'm very center. I'm about 50-50 on both of my feet. All right, now when I get ready to perform the eagle spread transition, this foot in front of the scissor is actually the leg that swings out. And the back leg is your base. All right, so I'm gonna refer to your back leg, my blue skate, as your base. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna roll this front foot around. You can keep your weight in your heel. That makes it easier to steer this skate. All right, so I'm gonna turn it out. Most of my weight is in my base leg at this point. So when that motion happens, most of my weight is in this base leg while this other one is turning out. This is turn out, this is turn in. So while this front leg is turning out, my weight is in this base leg, which is now in front. And then what happens is we're in the eagle spread. I've got one leg traveling forward, one leg traveling backwards. All right. In order to complete the transition, I need both legs traveling, both feet traveling backwards. All right. And the way that you do that is you can simply turn your foot. So scissor here, turn the foot around. You pick it up and you turn around. All right, you can also kind of roll to that position if you want to, but I think the easiest way is to scissor, roll it out, turn the other foot. Okay? Once you get the basic technique, then it's important for you to try to smoothen it out. And then the next step, of course, is turning back around forward. So that's how I turn back around forward, all right? So I scissor, I swing it around, I've completed the transition, I pick a foot up, and I turn back around by simply stepping, honestly. And it's not gonna be super smooth at first, and that's okay. But the way that you manage to pull off the step is while I'm here traveling backwards, you have to commit with your body, your hips, and your feet in order to get that full turn, okay? And this is an exercise that we teach here in class, is practicing your eagle spread stationary, picking your foot up and stepping all the way into an eagle spread, trying to get your feet as in line as possible and then standing back up. All right, so if you want to practice this stationary first so that you can kind of get a feel for it, this is okay. Also, we teach for people to step all the way through. So when you do it, you see I open up into the eagle and then I turn around backwards. I open up to the eagle, and you can think about it as turning around backwards. Turning around forward, it doesn't necessarily matter because you can also step straight into your eagle spread, okay? So instead of doing the scissor like this and turning around, and then that's how you turn back forward, you can do this to turn around in your eagle spread. You can simply pick up your foot and step straight into it, all right? That's a little bit more advanced because your wheels are off the ground. It's gonna take good 1 foot balance. It's gonna take good edge control to actually do that. But if you've already got the strength and the balance to perform that move, I would say go for that one, unless you just want to be smooth and try to roll it around on your eagle spread. They both serve their purpose. Once you're comfortable turning around, turning back forward, go the other way, turn back forward, okay? And then once you're going both ways on that eagle spread, then it's just a matter of smoothing it out, probably doing it to the beat, and you've mastered the eagle spread transition, all right? I would say there's some exercises that you could probably come up with if you've got space to skate in, to work on this a little bit. But I would say just get your reps in. This is one of the ones, like, you just got to get a bunch of reps in until it's smooth. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen the first day that you're trying it, but it can happen over time. All right. If you're in a small space, then I would say stick to that stationary drill so that you can start to build confidence and comfort with these positions, right? The stationary drill was this, where you're practicing your eagle spread in place, all right? And then you can also get a little bit of a roll and then practice turning around and then turning around again, all right? For those of you who are skating in smaller spaces, I hope you can see my feet in that last shot. So that covers the eagle spread transition. Next is gonna be scissor pivots. I've already demonstrated what our scissor position is. This is your scissor pivot, okay? This is our scissor position. I'm gonna turn, and I've completed my scissor pivot. And turn back around, okay? Now, let's go ahead and break it down. The scissor pivots. When I'm doing my scissor pivots, I'm of course starting in my scissor position, and then I'm gonna rotate on my toes. All right, so the weight goes into the balls of my feet, and then I lift up on my toes like this. From there, I rotate my body, my waist, all the things. That way I can turn all the way around. Notice that my feet don't change position, all right? They change direction, but they don't change position, all right? I'm still in my scissor position. My right foot is still over here. My left foot is still over here. So I'm gonna demonstrate again. Pivot, pivot, pivot. Nothing turns but my hips, all right? One big mistake that I see people make with your scissor pivots, the way that I'm trying to teach it, one big mistake that I commonly see is people bring their legs all the way through and they're switching the position of their feet when they perform their pivots, all right? So I'm gonna show you the correct way, which is this. And then I see this. This is not what I'm teaching, okay? That's also a useful skill to have. That's not the scissor pivots that I'm teaching. The point of this is to stay in a scissor position and practice pivots on both feet, because later on down the line, once we're doing single leg pivots like this, it's gonna be very important for you to be comfortable on your toes and your heels. All right, so when we're performing these scissor pivots, the first pivot that I do is gonna be performed on my toes. Now that I'm going backwards, the second pivot I perform is on my heels, okay? I'm gonna do it one more time. I'm gonna turn on my toes, and then I'm gonna turn on my heels, okay? When you do your scissor pivot, this is what it looks like full speed. Okay, I don't want you to think that you actually have to lift your toe and your heel up that much. I'm exaggerating for the sake of the video so that you can clearly tell what's happening here and where I'm putting my body weight. So that's how you perform the scissor pivot, okay? The last thing that I wanna point out, well, maybe not the last thing, but the next thing I wanna point out with your scissor pivots is you have to go the direction that your hips are open to, right? If I go the wrong way, then I end up in this weird cross-legged scenario, right? So I'm gonna do it towards you. Let me back up a little bit. So here's my scissor. I'm gonna pivot the wrong way. I end up in this weird cross-legged position. Again, it can also be a great skate move. There's a place for it. That's not what I'm teaching. What I'm teaching is scissor pivots done in the direction that your hips are open to. So that means if my right foot is back, I'm going to the right. That's one connection that you can make so that you can clearly think about it is whatever foot is in the back is the direction that you go. Now this foot is in the back. okay? And so when you are performing it back and forth like this, I call these switches, all right? So for the rest of the video, I'll be referring to scissor pivots the same direction in that 180 fashion. I'll refer to those as switches, all right? And then when you do your scissors and you wanna go all the way around, I don't know, I'll call those all around the world or something, right? When you go all the way, when you perform your 360 scissor pivots, right? So this is your 360 scissor pivot. Once you perform it, you switch, and then you can pivot again, right? The purpose of the switch is to open up your hips the correct direction so that you can actually make a full circle, all right? So once you're comfortable with the scissor pivot technique, the goal is scissor pivot to the left, scissor pivot to the right, all right? You wanna have mastery of the switches as well as the 360s both ways, all right? So you should be able to do it on repeat. Boom, 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 super smooth, all right? If you jam and you wanna dance, you should also be able to turn this into a groove by the time you're comfortable with it, right? Boom. And then you also wanna be comfortable with your switches. So here, boom, boom, down, boom, okay? So being able to go both ways is crucial in everything that we do. Other than that, I don't really think there's any more aspects to the scissor pivots that I really need to cover. You might notice that like I'm doing different things with my upper body. Like sometimes I fully commit and I'm facing the direction that I'm going with my scissor pivots, but also, especially on switches, you can kind of just keep your body centered right here. That way your hips, basically what that does is when you turn your body the direction that your lower half is facing, then you align with your hips, right? But your hips have a certain range of motion. So I'm gonna geek out for a second because I'm not no PhD or anything, but I do study the body. I know a little bit about fitness and the anatomy of the human body, right? So of course, we typically as humans are designed to reach a 180-degree range, right? You can go a little bit further than 180 degrees, but typically this is the safe range for things. That's as far as our arms can reach. That's as far as our head can turn. That's as far as our peripheral vision reaches. So that's basically how we're designed. Same thing goes with upper body alignment to lower body alignment, what your hips are doing versus what your torso is doing. These things matter, right? And so what's happening is whenever I'm turning my body in the same direction as my lower half, this motion is easier. But if I turned all the way the other way, I can feel the tension in my flexibility, in my range of motion. All my core is tightening because I'm being pulled this way. When I keep my body centered, I have more flexibility to go both ways smoothly and quickly, all right? So, you know, it's up to you how you want to approach this, but that's my little tangent on how that goes, all right? So next skill is gonna be heel and toe manuals. So I'm gonna demonstrate what the toe manuals look like, and then I'll break it down, and then we'll get into the heel manuals after, all right? So toe first. Here it is again, a little more dynamic. Okay, so what's happening with my toe manuals? Of course, you might have already spotted it, but I started right here in my scissor position. All right, I was really quick about it in the demonstration, but that is the starting point. Like I said, whenever we're teaching these things, we build on top of them, because when you have a deep understanding of the fundamentals and all the basic positions and concepts of roller skating that we've narrowed down, then it's easier to build on top of these skills you're already familiar with. Just like when you go through grade school, you don't jump straight to calculus and you don't even know addition, subtraction, or multiplication, or any of those foundations, all right? You have to have a good understanding of the basis so that you can build on top of it, all right? So the foundation are those things like your eagle spread, your scissor position, turning in the hips, turning out in the hips. All right, all these things are foundations that get built on top of as we progress to more advanced moves. A lot of people skip straight to what they see on Instagram. They skip straight to the cool 1 foot spin or all these things, which is fine. Like, those things are really fun. But if you actually are trying to achieve mastery in roller skating and level up your skate game to the highest level, then you have to be very tactful in your approach. And masters and exceptional people don't do exceptional things one time. They do the basics and the fundamentals exceptionally well. All right, you can ask anybody like Michael Jordan or any of the greats, or even Kobe has said it in some of his past interviews, is that like practicing things like a simple layup, a simple free throw shot 1,000 times for hours and hours every day, like that is what makes him great. So back to our toe manuals. I'm in my scissor position and then I lift up on my toes. You can think about this as if you're flexing your foot. All right, so if you just go like this and you flex your foot, you can put your weight in the balls of your feet and lift up onto your toes. Okay. From there, initially, especially trying to get comfortable on it at first, it's all about just holding it in a straight line. You can practice this stationary. Like I said, if you don't have a lot of space to work with, a lot of these exercises and things that I'm talking about, you're gonna have to perform stationary, unfortunately, unless you go outside, find you a tennis court, find you somebody's rink or a skate park or something along those lines, right? So holding it here, getting comfortable with that, maybe turning, all right? Anything you can do to spend more time up here on your toes, but a toe manual is simply being up on your toes, all right? I demonstrated it on the move because it's an easy way to understand it, but toe manual is literally just being up on your toes, holding it. You can do so many things up here. It's super fun. But if you have those big toe plugs, this is gonna be a bit more difficult for you, all right? When you have the smaller jam plugs, then life gets easier because you got a lot more toe clearance. But that's the basics behind toe manuals. So let's build on top of it, all right? Some good exercises for you to do. This is gonna be either small space or on the move. I'll demonstrate both. Would be to walk your toe manuals, okay? This is one of the exercises we teach here at Skate Shot Studios to some of the students and members that come through on a regular. Once they make it to this level, we usually try to give progressions, modifications to make it more challenging so that you're always getting better. In a small space, you would want to just do it in a circle or try to hold it in place. Things like that. But what's happening with that movement? Let's go ahead and break it down. So I'm up on my toes and I want you to think about it like you're carving out 2 semicircles, right? One here, one there, one here, one there. I'm carving out these circles in the floor with my toes. I'm tracing them with my toes, okay? I don't think the camera got that shot. Here we go, I'm gonna do it again. But I'm tracing the circles with my toes, okay? I was talking about toe manuals and the exercise of walking it, all right? Half circles. Also, you can think about it as you're turning your hips to a diagonal direction, right? So I'm gonna look straight at you, right? Now, if I think about it, like I'm turning my hips this way, and then I'm turning my hips this way, what happens is I'm doing this type of motion with my toes, right? Turning my hips diagonal here, diagonal there. And what that does is it keeps me in a wide stance, all right? So if you look at, let's say, an NFL player, for example, right? You look at those linemen, their job is to push each other over so that they can try to get to the ball, get a tackle, right? And so a part of what they do is they try to get as stable as possible. They're gonna get low, they're gonna create a wide stance in their feet because that is one of the most stable positions we can be in. On the other hand, instead of being wide this way, you can also be wide this way in your scissor position. So this is also a very stable position. So if you maintain your scissor and you're wide, right here. Then you find a good middle ground for you to place your body weight so that you can always maintain your balance. It's very key, because what you don't want to do is be right here and try to be up on your toes, okay? Also, this is another one of those things, like, it is possible. It's just a lot more difficult if you're learning this for the first time, all right? So a lot of times when I'm teaching this to people and this is their first time approaching it, I always tell them that if you're here and you've got your toes right next to each other and you're trying to perform this move, that's no man's land, all right? You're gonna have what we like to call a Scooby-Doo moment, you know, where you got the sound effects and you fly back, zoop, 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 right? Like you just slipped on a banana peel, and those backwards falls be the ugliest, okay? That's why we wear protective gear. Always wear your protective gear when you're practicing, when you're in a practice environment. When you're having fun, doing your thing, you know, maybe not. But when you're practicing and you know you're putting in some work and you're doing things on the edge of your comfort level, wear wrist guards, elbow pads, knee pads, butt pads, helmets, mouthpieces, neck braces, whatever you need to feel safe so that you can resume normal life with all the body parts you started off the day with intact. Wear it to protect yourself, all right? Back to the toe manuals. So I'm turning my hips in those diagonal directions, turning my hips in those diagonal directions, and carving out those half circles. I'm bringing my feet to the front. At the same time, I'm changing the direction of my hips. Okay, so every time I change direction of my hips, I'm bringing my back foot to the front of my scissor position, which means I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. It's not straight forward and back. It's not straight forward and back. I'm not doing this, okay? I'm gonna try to show you all the angles here. I am not straight forward and back. I am curving out different directions every time, okay? So, hopefully that's clear enough, because it's kind of hard to articulate how to properly do this move through a video, and I can't give you feedback. So I kind of have to know the issues and address them up front. But for the most part, the biggest goal here is just being comfortable holding your toe manuals, okay? So, and I have some exercises that can help you get stronger at this too, that you can do out of skates. Let's go ahead and get into heel manuals. For those of you who have the big jam plugs on your toes, you probably can't do toe manuals, so heel manuals are gonna be your next best friend, okay? So here it is. I probably look like one of them bad kids that just take off running in the hallway and hit you with that in the hallway with the heelys on. But look, that is your heel manuals, all right? I'm just riding on my heels. Same thing applies here. I'm not gonna go too deep on walking you through all the same exact steps and exercises on the heels. Same thing as the toe manuals, applying the heel manuals. So I'm in my scissor position. This time I'm gonna flex my foot up, all right? So instead of pointing my toe, I flex it up, all right? And when I pull up on this, I'm gonna raise up on my heels. And then you hold your balance, all right? You can sway side to side with them at the same time in the scissor position. That's of course also something you can do with your toes, but you can sway side to side with them at the same time in the scissor position. You can also perform the half circles where you're walking your heel manuals, okay? And then this is the other part. You can do all of the other exercises on your toes or your heels as well. So for example, the eagle spread transition, right? The eagle spread transition, if you master that and then you do it on your heels, boom, it just turned into that, right? And then you can also do that on your toes as well. This is how you start to get comfortable with things like the grapevine, which you just saw me do a little bit right there, is you turn, boom, and then you come back. Getting comfortable on your toes is one element of the grapevine. Getting comfortable with turn in your hips and turn out is another element of the grapevine. And you bring these things together because they can be practiced individually, and then you achieve mastery of the move. This is why we have fundamentals. This is why we learn the most basic version of a skill and master it so you can build on top of it and not just haphazardly, accidentally try to attempt these moves that your body ain't ready for. Like, you don't have the skate muscles yet. You haven't fully developed as a skater yet. You're still learning. These things take time. It took me years, literally probably like 2 years before I got super smooth on my grapevine and can do it any kind of way from any position. Probably about 2 years, like the first 2-3 years of my skate journey. And this was like a really big move for me because the guy who started to teach me in the beginning was from Chicago. And anybody who knows anything about the JB roller skating style, all the footwork and intricacies and nuances that go with that, the grapevine is a key element to it. So anyway, that's my little tangent on that. The next skill that we're gonna go over is hockey stops and J stops. Now, really, I just have it labeled on the board as complex stops. So basically anything that's not a scissor stop or a T stop, I would consider to be a complex stop. Complex stops. Like I said, anything outside of a scissor stop where I drop that toe, or if I was doing it backwards and I push that toe into the ground, or anything that's not a T stop, right? Where I'm dragging my wheels and I'm performing that T stop. You can even do your T stop backwards. You drag it like that, drag it right here. Anything outside of that, I would consider to be a complex stop. There's other versions and ways to stop, but starting off, fundamentally, beginners, those are your two go-tos, I would say. You want the scissor stop for starters, especially if you got the big toe plug, and then you want to graduate to a T stop, which should be one of the first ways you learn how to stop if you don't have the big toe plug. That way, you're not relying on tearing up your skate in order to stop. So hockey stops, J stops, plow stops, whatever you want to call all these different things. I'm just going to show you a couple techniques. I roughly know some of the names, but really I'm more focused on the technique. So if I butcher the names or get it wrong or make something up, oh well. All right. Here's a hockey stop, I believe. So going backwards, and then I push my back foot out. I'm going to do it coming towards you so you can see. And I push my back foot. I push my back foot out, okay? So let's see. The first thing that you'll notice is, of course, I'm in my scissor position and then I turn this foot out and I start pushing it. Now what's happening here is I'm kind of in a lunge, right? So if you think about like a lunge position, I'm a little bit in a lunge. My weight is on this front leg, okay? And this back leg is pretty free. Like it's maybe got 10% of my entire body weight. I'm pretty much standing on this front leg. All right, so this is where single leg balance becomes very critical because you gotta have the confidence to actually hold yourself up on this back leg. Not because you're actually gonna be up on one foot, but because skill in that is gonna make how you apply your weight to your back foot a lot smoother and a lot easier. It's gonna make the whole technique cleaner, okay? So what I'm doing is I am simply, slowly, smoothly applying that weight, driving that weight into my back foot. The way I want you to think about this, I would assume that you've probably driven a car or maybe, something where when you smash on the brakes, it would send you forward, right? You don't just smash on the brakes. Same thing here. I tell people all the time, let's use the scissor stop, for example. I tell people all the time, don't smash on the brakes. Don't scissor stop and plant that toe and then try to stay anchored to that one spot and force your body to stop on a dime like that. It's smooth. It's applied pressure over a period of time, over a certain distance, okay? So I'm slowly pushing out, and then that gets me my hockey stop, all right? The other stop that you can use is, I would call it a J stop. I'm pretty sure that's probably not the name either, but you basically curve to a stop, all right? So you're taking all your forward momentum And you're sending it into a slight circle, or think of it like a J, right? In order to bring your momentum to a halt. Because physics, I don't understand the physics of it though. But that's how it works. All right, you see that I'm dropping my toe. You don't necessarily have to drop your toe if you don't want to. You can keep your foot flat. This is, of course, a more complex or advanced stop because for those of you who know what a compass spin is, it kind of resembles that a little bit, but I'm using it in order to stop, not as a trick to do for fun. So that's those stops. Some of the other more complex stops that I would say is once you're comfortable with that hockey, you're comfortable with your backwards tee, either turn your foot in, turn your foot in or out on that backwards tee stop. A plow stop where I'm bringing my feet together and applying weight to my outside edges to bring myself to a stop. Also, you can plow stop with one foot forward. So kind of like I bring one foot out and it's almost like a forward or reverse hockey stop, right? So instead of going backwards and pushing out this way, I'm going forward and pushing out in front. I don't know what that stop is called. That one might be like a half plow stop or something too. But that's another one that I do. And then other than that, like some of the more advanced stops would be like sliding on 2 feet. So like a 2-foot hockey stop, I guess. Or you can even do it on 1 foot if you get really comfortable with it. I'm not very good at that one, but I'll try one more time. Almost bust my butt, but you see what I mean. Next is gonna be edge control. Now, I'm not talking about what goes on your hair. I'm talking about holding the edges in your skates, getting comfortable with that. This is more of a concept than it is a technique or a move. But the idea of edge control is, number one, the fundamentals of edges is you have 3 edges. You have your outer edges, you have your inner edges, and you have your center edges, all right? I'm only exaggerating this so you can clearly tell that I'm putting the weight on the outside of my skates, right? On the inside of my feet, that would get me my inner edge movement. And then when you're center, square, that is your center edges, all right? So the idea of edge control is all about being able to apply all the way up to maximum amounts of body weight to an edge without falling over or losing your balance. So this is what I mean. If you take, so I want you to find something stable for you to hold on to, and then I want you to lean and apply. I'll show you this way. I want you to lean and apply weight into one of your edges as far as you can, just enough so that right before your wheels lift up off the ground. If your wheels lift up off the ground, you've applied too much weight. And if your wheels aren't close to lifting off the ground, then you're not applying enough. That right there is how much you can lean on an edge, how much pressure you can apply to it without losing your balance. Now, the problem comes in is like most people aren't comfortable holding their edges that deeply. You're not used to applying that much weight and putting your whole well-being in the hands of that position, right? That's the scary part. That's where fear kicks in, because it's like, oh, I'm up on 1 foot, I'm applying all this weight, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna tip over and fall or not. So I call it your skater's spatial awareness, you know, like your roller skate spatial awareness. Just like when you're parallel parking a car, which some of you might not be able to do, or whenever you're backing into a garage and you don't have like a rear camera, you kind of start to learn, or even just pulling into a normal parking spot, you start to learn over time, like, I'm not quite gonna fit in that space. I might be cutting it kind of close. Like you can't see exactly how close, but you can kind of feel how close your car is, you know what I'm saying? You get the same spatial awareness in your skates. You start to feel how close your feet are and whether your wheels are gonna clack onto one another, right? Or you start to feel let's say you have lace locks, those little C-clamp hooks that hold your laces on the upper part of your skates. Some of you might have experienced getting those like caught on one another. Learning how to skate and not let those catch one another is the skill of spatial awareness that I'm describing. Understanding how much room you have to manipulate and maneuver in your skates, all right? That happens over time. So that's not necessarily something you can focus on, but edge control is. So one exercise, if you have space, would be to just hold an edge. Okay, so I know I'm getting kind of close to the camera here, and you might not be able to see what I'm doing. Okay, so edge control. One of the exercises you can do to practice edge control, hopefully you have some space. This one's kind of difficult to practice in a small space unless you're focused on maybe spins, since that can involve heavy edges as well. But swerving both feet. This is just like the heel and toe exercise, but this time I'm mostly focused on leaning into my edges and trying to get some curve out of it, all right? This is emphasized whenever you do it on one foot, because now you can apply your whole body weight into your skates in order to get that sway, that curve from side to side. And of course, I'm also steering and changing directions using the windshield wiper technique, which is something that I've covered in the fundamentals course. Basically, the idea of putting more weight in either your heel or your toe, that way you can move your skate easily, right? In order to steer these positions. So that's a brief cover on edge control. The next skill is gonna be single leg maneuvers. So single leg maneuvers is also edge control, what I was just describing, but you can practice your edge control on both feet versus single leg maneuvers would be something like this, right? Or you can do it backwards, right? Single leg maneuvers is also super useful for like whenever you're dancing or doing something, right? You can, let's say if you're doing like a C, right? That's a single leg maneuver as well, because I'm coming up on one foot and then I'm curving on my edges and using my windshield wiper technique in order to steer my skates where I want it to go. So those are all single leg maneuvers. Again, kind of just a general concept, not necessarily defined to a single technique. These things start to get a little bit more and more general sometimes. Let's move on to your introduction to jumps. We've got intro to jumps and then intro to spins, and that's it, okay? So that'll be all 8 skills. And so intro to jumps, start on carpet, start on grass, start on some sort of textured surface. Maybe if it's your jam, you start on a mat, okay? So I'll go ahead and demonstrate. I'm not above practicing on a mat, okay? Get you a textured surface so you're not worried about rolling away, especially if this is your first time intentionally lifting off of the ground in wheels, all right? It scared the piss out of me when I first started doing 180s and 360s. I didn't do it for years. I was probably skating like 4 or 5 years before I decided to 360, which might seem crazy, but nobody around me was doing it. So I was pretty afraid of letting my wheels leave the ground, which is why we're gonna baby step into it. We're gonna ease into it because most people have similar fears to greater or lesser degrees, okay? Gonna start with a baby little bunny hop, all right? Just enough to get your wheels off the ground. And then once you're comfortable here, you jump higher, okay? You can jump as high as you want, as hard as you want. The idea is to get comfortable letting your wheels leave the ground. Now, once you start jumping really high, you gotta think about how to properly land. All right, so I'm gonna break down briefly the idea of like landing properly. All right, so I'm coming a little closer. I don't know if, let's see, yeah, okay, you can see me right there. I'm looking in the mirror if y'all are wondering what I'll be looking at. Back a little bit. So once you start jumping as hard as you can or really high, you gotta land properly so you don't hurt yourself, all right? So that means don't try to lock up and tense up, and like you don't want your body to absorb the full impact. You don't want any single joint to absorb the full impact of it. You want your body to more or less like collapse. You want to land relaxed, not necessarily ragdoll and fall to the ground, but when you land, it shouldn't look like this. Like, just like stiff and don't move. Like land as straight and locked out as possible. That is not the way, okay? So it should be more like jumping and like flowing to the safe position to be in, right? Like letting your knees bend like a spring that just got pressed in, right? Letting your back bend a little bit. I don't know if y'all have seen it, but like if you watch a skateboarder or a snowboarder or something, like clear a gap and they're like jumping from like a flight of stairs, like they cover like 10 stairs and they land at the bottom, they never land like this, okay? They always land and let their body scrunch like an accordion, right? So they'll come all the way down off this jump and they'll land like that. They get really low. They let their body compress and then release all of that energy. You want to disperse it, all right? That's also the art of falling in general. You never want your body to absorb the full impact on one place. So make sure that you're practicing that, all right? So once you're comfortable doing those bunny hops in place, and you can stay on your textured surface or your mat or whatever you're practicing on, start there, then graduate to the floor, okay? Once you're comfortable with your little bunny hops, then do a quarter turn. So here, here. Do a little quarter turn, okay? And then once you're comfortable with quarter turns, and also go the other way, okay? Once you're comfortable with quarter turns, then you can go for the 180. So turning all the way around, go the other way. Okay, now remembering how we land, remembering how to lift off. Once you're comfortable on your texture surface, mat, carpet, side of the rink, whatever, go on the surface you actually want to skate on, whether that's outdoor, concrete, tennis court, wood, go on there. Because once your wheels are under you and you have the option of rolling, it creates another element of balance that you have to practice. And then once you can accomplish a 180, then it's time to take it on the move, okay? So 180s are fun, but they're a lot more fun when you do it on the move, okay? So start off again, trying to get your confidence up with a little bunny hop. And then once you're comfortable, you go for the 180, okay? Now, a lot of you are gonna feel like you need to jump as high as possible and actually lift off of the ground. But the reality is, especially for something like a 180, even a 360, if you turn quickly enough, your feet almost don't even have to leave the ground. You just have to give your body enough lift to be like barely grazing the ground. And then you rotate fast enough so that you end up in the position you want to be in. So this is what I mean. I'm gonna demonstrate a 180 where I jump and then a 180 where I just lift, okay? So this is the jump. This is the lift, okay? It looks like a pivot because my wheels are so close to the ground. In most cases, my wheels are still in contact with the ground the entire time. But what I'm doing is I'm mimicking a jump to get that upward momentum, and I'm creating lift in my body. But what that does is I don't have 185 pounds of pressure driving into the ground. And so all I have to do is rotate. All right, last point on this 180, and then I've got to go teach this private, and I'll be back to finish this lesson, is it can also be applied. So once you're comfortable with your 180s and your you can move on to 360s, all right? And that's gonna follow a lot of the same concepts. You just walk it up, right? So you can start stationary, you can start texture surface, and then practice the 360 in place, and then you go and you do it on the move. So just like I was saying, you only have to create lift. When I'm here, that's a 360, and all I did was create lift. My wheels were still in contact, but if you want to see like a jump, that's a 360, okay? So other than that, that is your intro to jumping. Now we're just on intro to spins. There are 3 ways I like to teach people how to spin. The first way is gonna be from a slight lunge position. All right, so basically got my feet scissored like this, okay? Slight bend in the knee, most of my weight forward, toe dropped back. From here, I want you to twist your body to the side. All right, so let me face the other way so you can see better. All right, I'm going to go like this, and I'm gonna twist my body to open up this way. From here, I'm gonna twist everything all at once, okay? I'm gonna twist everything all at once and square up right here. Now, what's gonna happen is, I want you to use that momentum in order to perform the spin. I want you to just send yourself into a rotation. You don't have to do it on your toes or your heels or any particular type of way. Just twist hard enough to rotate. And I want you to practice just getting used to rotating like this, okay? It can be as much of a spin or as little of a spin as you want it to be, all right? But just keep your wheels flat and practice rotating. That is the best starting point for spins, all right? So that's technique number 1 on how to enter a spin. Technique number 2 on how to enter a spin. I don't really know what it's called or even what I call it, but maybe just like dropping into a spin. So we're gonna use our eagle spread position, turning out in our hips and feet, all right, in order to drop into a spin, right? So I drop this foot back and then I turn. Same rules apply starting off. If this is your first couple attempts at doing a spin, then focus on entering it whatever way you prefer. So dropping that foot and then rotating. Just focus on rotation, not perfecting some sort of toe spin or heel spin or anything like that, but just getting used to dropping that foot and rotating and seeing if you could get more rotations out of it than just one, okay? And then the third way that I like to teach spins is from the scissor position right here. This one's a bit more complex, but it works for some people. I put my weight in my heel, I put my weight in my back toe, and then from this scissor, I'm gonna pull my legs back together, pull them back in. And then you can already start to feel how this turns into some form of a rotation, right? And so what you can do is if you perform that move smoothly and hard enough, then you can like throw yourself, I was about to say send yourself, or like throw yourself into a rotation, right? So here, boom. And you just throw yourself into a rotation, all right? Now that's simply your introduction to spins. Those 3 methods are gonna be your smoothest options for getting into a spin, to start a spin. Now the first method that I showed you from this lunge, this is also a good way to stop your spins. So once you have, a few rotations going and you're spinning, let's say you wanna stop, you drop that toe into the lunge, and then you stop, all right? I'll show you sideways. I'm spinning, stop, spin, stop, boom. Okay, so the first form or technique on how to enter your spins is a good starting point, as well as a great stopping point. For the other techniques, it's a little bit different, but that is the basics to how to for how to enter a spin. All right, now when it comes to practicing spins, getting good at spins, mastering spins, I tell everybody, all the students here, all the members here, all the time, like the two things that I believe are like hardest to master in roller skating are spins and pivots. All right, like especially single leg pivots. Those are like the two highest level things, but once you have them, it feels so good. It's so satisfying. And spins is definitely one of them. So from here, what I want you to do is simply rotate. Try to get one full rotation with your feet flat. And then once you get comfortable doing one or two rotations with that, I want you to decide what spin you want to practice first. Are you going to spin on your toes? Are you going to spin on your heels? Are you going to spin on one heel, one toe? All right, these are all your options. So one heel, one toe, where I just put my weight in it like that. All right, you've got toe spins, and then you've got heel spins. All right, I wouldn't say any one of them is more difficult than the other. They all have their own nuances to how you perform it, right? So you got to have, you're not necessarily all the way up on your toe and heel like this when you're doing the spin. You have to apply the correct amount of body weight in order for you to keep your wheels on the ground and to properly perform this spin. Same thing goes for your toes and your heels. You got to properly apply your body weight and then hold these positions kind of like a static exercise in order to perform a good spin. So if you don't have toe plugs, I would say do a toe spin. It has the most options. You can do some of the coolest stuff on your toes. And so that would look like this. Okay, now, at first I want you to try to get one rotation. Then the next goal is to try to get two rotations, and then try to consistently hit 3 rotations on your spins. All right, once you can do about 2 or 3 rotations, then the only thing I want you to focus on is getting attempts. All right, and what I mean by attempts are just go for it. Try to spin as long and for as long as you can. And this is why we wear protective gear, because you know you're gonna spin until you fall. So if you know you're gonna fall, protect yourself. I especially wear gear whenever I practice spins because I don't wanna stop spinning. I'm gonna try to save it and spin as long as I can and save that spin until I completely lose balance and smash out on the ground, right? Just like completely wipe out. When you have that certainty that you will not hurt yourself, it's very easy to commit to these moves. And when it comes to spinning, you need to commit your entire body to the motion in order to properly enter it and hold it. And so attempts, and I would say a decent session for the day, like if you go skating for an hour and you want to practice something, think about this. This is your practice method. 10 attempts. Like I said, after you can perform a couple rotations, in the beginning, it's 1 rotation. Just get 1 rotation, just get 2 rotations, just get 3 rotations. Past that, attempts, all right? 10 attempts in 1 session, that's fine. Like you'll probably exert yourself more than you're used to. Once you're comfortable with 10 attempts, go for 15, go for 20. You can extend this as much as you want. You're in control of your own training. I just wanted to share how I practice. I think the mindset and the approach of I'm gonna give it 10 attempts is a lot more fruitful than the mindset of I need to rotate 10 times, all right? Because that's difficult and you're not necessarily in control of it, right? So if you don't hit it, if you don't hit 10 rotations, what are you gonna do? Like you're gonna be mad that you didn't have an effective practice and you're gonna feel bad about it, or any of the other negative emotions that come with that. Attempts are within your control. Whether you rotate 10 times or not isn't in your control. However, try to get it anyway. You know, like that can be like the sub goal. And then the primary goal is like 10 attempts, all right? So that is all I have for you on the intro to spins. Like I said, this is the intermediate course. This is just like the middle level of moves that we narrowed down. We narrow everything down to about 8 skills per level. But there's plenty of other things that would be considered an intermediate skill. And I will continue on to teach those in further lessons. Hopefully this helps. Get your practice in, get your reps in. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to message me, comment, reach out, whatever. I do group coaching calls. We teach 10 classes a week here. we help people on a regular basis. This is literally what we do for a living. So don't hesitate to reach out. I can help. I can definitely help, and I'm definitely willing to. Looking forward to your progress. Hopefully this helps, and I'll see you at the next lesson. Peace.